Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas. This episode is also brought to you by Peghead Nation, the home of roots music instruction. If you want to improve your playing, join me and thousands of other pickers getting better every day at pegheadnation.com. Hi, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who loves bluegrass. Hey, welcome back to Bluegrass Jam Along. This is your Bluegrass Briefing for Monday the 17th of February 2025. And if you missed it on the podcast last week, I put out the very first of a new series of episodes called Bite-Size Episodes. And the thing with them is there's 400 and something episodes of the podcast now. I've interviewed well over 100 people. There is loads and loads of stuff. And I'm going to keep going, but I don't always manage to get an interview done every week. And so the weeks that I don't, I'm going to put out a bite-sized episode, which is just a little chunk of something cool from an episode you might have missed. Or might have heard, but be interested in hearing again. It's fascinating for me digging back through and finding these things. And the first one that I put out on Wednesday, which seems to have gone down really well, is a little snippet of Jack Lawrence chatting a couple of years ago when I interviewed him about Doc Watson's 100th birthday. And he's just chatting about a D18 that Doc gave him and he restored, and it's a lovely little story, warm and funny, and just lovely little insight into Doc and into Jack, and really cool. So go and listen to that if you missed it, and I'll be putting some more of those out in between bits and pieces. But next week, this week in fact, I'm recording this at the weekend, but this will be Monday by the time it's out. This week I have an interview for you, and it is with Jake Workman, and I'm really excited about this one. It was when I found that Jake was leaving Kentucky Thunder and working with Ricky Skaggs, I just messaged him and said, look, I'd love to chat to you about your time with Ricky, how you got the gig, what you learned, kind of reasons for moving on and all that kind of stuff. And he said, yeah, great. So we've had a chat and I really enjoyed it. And that is going to be out on Wednesday. So do stay tuned for that. I have some really cool bits lined up over the next few weeks. Really cool. And I'm looking forward to putting them out. And I'll tell you about them a little bit more nearer the time. But for now, check out the bite-sized episode with Jack Lawrence and stick around till Wednesday for the episode with Jake Workman. That's it for pod news for now. I'm going to crack on with news and announcements, which is the section we like to call Church Street News. And talking about Jake Workman and moving on from Ricky Skaggs and Kentucky Thunder, Jason Carter has announced he is leaving Del McCoury Band and the Travelling McCourys to focus on solo stuff. Jason has been with the Del McCoury Band for 33 years. It's hard to imagine that band without him in it. He's been such a staple part of that band and that sound for some time. And one of the really key bits of me getting into bluegrass seriously was Steve Earle's album The Mountain with the Del McCoury Band, and Jason's fiddle playing is obviously all over that. His break on Graveyard Shift, for example, one of my favourite fiddle solos. He's great, and so looking forward to seeing what comes next, and there's some news coming up about that in a sec. But yeah, just let's celebrate Jason Carter and 3 extraordinary decades with the Del McCoury Band. Very cool indeed. The first thing he's got coming up next, he's got a record coming out with Michael Cleveland called Carter and Cleveland, which is out on March the 14th. There is a single from that out now. I'll tell you about that in a bit when we do the new releases. But yeah, so Jason Carter and Michael Cleveland have an album coming in a few weeks, so stick around for news on that one. Yeah, looking forward to hearing that. Sounds like it's going to be great. There's another new record which is due February 23rd, so not long now. Max Wareham's called Doggone, and features Chris Eldridge, David Greer, Laura Orshaw, all sorts of really cool people. There's a single now, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But yeah, Max Wareham's album, Doggone, is out February 23rd, that one. Another new record on the way from Rhiannon Giddens, and she's teamed up with Justin Robinson, who she was in Carolina Chocolate Drops with. And she's got a record called What Did the Blackbird Say to the Crow, which is an album of North Carolina fiddle and banjo music, which is out in April on None Such Records. So I will give you a shout about that one nearer the time when that's out as well. Seldom Seen have a new record coming in March called Remains to be Seen, which is the last with Dudley Connell in the band. More about that when it comes as well, but it's a few interesting things on the horizon in the next month or two. So yeah, keep your ears peeled. I will remind you when they're out, and I'll stick things in the playlist as and when we get there. But lots of things to put on your radar there. Some cool music coming. A record which is not new is JD Crowe and the New South Rounder 0044, which is like just a classic. I mean, you know, Tim Stafford has said he considers that the high watermark of bluegrass, and that has been inducted into the Grammys Hall of Fame. Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing achievement. It's an extraordinary record, and just like as a record, let alone the careers it sort of kicked off, people in that band. But yeah, so it's nice to see it getting that recognition. It's a favourite album of a lot of people, I know that, and so cool to see that. And two final bits of news. Grey Fox has announced their lineup for the summer. I'll stick a link in the show notes, go and have a look. Del McCoury, Sam Bush, Sierra Hull, I'm With Her, very cool. And Woodstock, a celebration in memory of Happy Traum, featuring all sorts of brilliant people. But go to the Grey Fox website, there's a link in the show notes, and go and see what's coming up there, because there's some very good stuff going on. And one final bit of news, Fiddle Camp, the Casey Dreesen Blue Ridge Fiddle Camp. They've got a scholarship. It's called the Fiddle Family Scholarship, aimed at young fiddlers, in the words from the website, with the drive to play, practice, jam and explore. They recognise the impact that camps and shared musical experience had on their lives, and have graciously started the Fiddle Family Scholarship for one deserving musician and their dedicated parent or guardian to embark on a musical journey together. I'll put a link in the show notes to the website. That's a really cool idea. It's really nice to fund people who can't necessarily afford things like that, because they are such a key thing. You know, the amount of people I talk to for this podcast who mention going to music camps as part of their journey. So that's a really cool initiative. The deadline is March the 8th. If you know anybody who might benefit from that, share that info with them. Point them in the direction of this episode, send them to the website, whatever. But I'll put a link in the show notes. Go and check that out. I think that's it. So, recap. Jason Carter leaving the McCourys. New record with Michael Cleveland coming out. Max Wareham's got a new record coming. Rhiannon Giddens has a record with Justin Robinson on the way. Seldom Seen's last album with Dudley Connell is on the way. JD Crowe and the New South inducted into the Grammys Hall of Fame. Grey Fox lineup is out with some very, very cool bands, and the Fiddle Camp Scholarship as well. So, all of that, links in the show notes. You know what to do. Let us move on to the new releases, which is the section we call The Grass is New. And a new bit of Bluegrass number one, Carter and Cleveland. They've got a new track called With a Vamp in the Middle. I've put it in the Grass is Mostly New 2025 playlist. There's a link in the show notes. Go find that on Spotify. Collects together all the tracks I mentioned on these weekly roundups. And it's a good way of just keeping in touch with new releases. So go and save that, add it to your library, whatever. And I will keep adding tracks every week as there's a new release to listen to. So yeah, Carter and Cleveland With a Vamp in the Middle. Shelby Means, who loads of you will know from Molly Tuttle's band, plays bass with Molly. She's got a new album on the way, actually, but she's got a track called Streets of Boulder, which is out now and is in the playlist, which features the Tuttles. Carl Tuttle and Molly Tuttle are both on that. Yeah, Shelby Means, Streets of Boulder. Go and have a listen to that. Really enjoying that. Aaron Burdett has got a track called Paris, which is also in the playlist. Features Kristen Scott Benson, Carly Arrowwood, Tristan Scroggins on mandolin, who's been a guest on the podcast, of course. And finally, a track from Max Wareham's upcoming record. The track is called Black and Gold. That's the single. So going to have a listen to that as well. Also in the playlist. So yeah, Carter and Cleveland, Shelby Means, Aaron Burdett and Max Wareham all have new songs. They're all in the Grass is Mostly New playlist. Go and stick them in your ears. Next, scroll on, buddy. And for those of you new to the podcast, Scroll On Buddy is the title for the section where I just mentioned something that I've seen on the social media and thought you might be interested in. And this one actually isn't something I saw on social media at all. It's something Chuck, very good friend of the podcast, sent me a link to a Facebook post. Thank you again, Chuck. Always good to hear from you. Thanks for all these tips you keep giving me. And a really interesting thing, to honour the 100th anniversary of the 1925 Johnson City Fiddlers Convention, John McCutcheon and friends are recording a tribute album to kind of honour the 100th anniversary. Features Old Crow Medicine Show, Molly Tuttle, Bruce Molsky, Cody Norris, all sorts of people donating their time and their talent. And there's, rather than a crowdfunder, they're just putting up for pre-order, so you can pre-order a CD and just support it happening, which is a really cool way of doing it. So if you want to pre-order that and find out a bit more, I will stick a link in the show notes. You can have a look at that. But yeah, John McCutcheon and friends celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 1925 Johnson City Fiddlers Convention. Go and have a look at that. And it just remains to mention what's been in my ears this week. And my ears have been full of Grissman and Rice. And the reason is I have got the complete Tone Poems download from Acoustic Disc. I've got the CD of Tone Poems. I've had it for years, and what a fantastic album that is. But Acoustic Disc offers as a download the complete Tone Poems, which has alternate takes, partial takes, little bits of chat from David Grissman and Tony Rice. Fascinating. It's such an interesting listen anyway, that record, because it's just two people. There's no singing, it's just two instruments in your ears and you hear everything. And hearing some different takes and some bits and pieces, like with some things, all the bonus tracks and stuff are a little bit pointless, but not with this. It's a really interesting deep dive into what is a wonderful record. So do go and check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to go and have a look at that. It's on the Acoustic Disc website. You can go and buy that. They've got so much cool stuff on there as well. New stuff, old stuff, archive stuff, live stuff. Do go and listen. Check some of their stuff out. But that is it for this week. All the usual stuff applies. bluegrassjamalong.com for chord sheets, all the episodes, sort them by theme, by date, whatever. You can go and find some stuff. There's so many interviews now. And as I say, these bite-sized things will surface some interesting things that have maybe got a bit lost in the timeline. But go and dig around on the website. There's so much on there. You can search for everything guitar-related, everything Tony Rice-related, everything banjo related, whatever. Go and have a look on the website, bluegrassjamalong.com, and just head to the interviews page there. Final bit is you can support the podcast by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, and you get to donate a tiny amount of money each month to help keep the podcast running, but also you get to listen ad-free if that is something that is useful to you. Go to Apple Podcasts, there's a little banner there. You can do a free 7-day trial. You don't need to sign up. You can try it for 7 days and just see how you feel about it. But it all goes to help support the podcast, which A, is very useful, and B, is very much appreciated by me. But I'm going to stop talking now. Go off and have a marvellous week. I'll see you on Wednesday with the Jake Workman episode. In the meantime, have fun and happy picking. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, making some of the finest guitars and mandolins in the world since the 1970s. Visit collingsguitars.com and find out why.